Are you there? How about that? How about that for a tease? I'm so sorry. I forgot to push a button, and I think you can hear me now. If you can hear me, let me know. I wanted to build the suspense of tonight's show. Thanks for being here. I'm Nate Eaton. This is Courtroom Insider. I think the technical problems are worked out. There was so much happening tonight, this afternoon, and all day at court today that I may have missed a button or two, but I'm so glad you're here. And we have so much to talk about. We're going to break down everything, not everything that happened today at the Daybell trial, because we'd be here all night long, but kind of the key points that I observed today in the trial. There was a lot that happened, a lot to talk about, and why don't we just get right to it? I'm going to jump in. Coming up tonight, we will talk about JJ's burial site, what the FBI agent said about what was discovered at his burial site, and also the graphic autopsy photos that were shown not to the public today, but to the jurors. They got to see them. Melanie Pawlowski, Lori's niece, took the stand for the first time. We've heard from her, at least in a courtroom. Last year, she was on the witness list. She came to Idaho to testify, and she ended up not being called. She did indeed take the stand today for about an hour. Her husband, she talked about the relationship with Chad and Lori and Alex, and how all of them kind of communicated, and how she would go to Lori and Chad for advice, for counsel, for she even moved her life. She left her home in Arizona and moved up to Idaho to be close to her aunt and Chad and Alex. We'll talk about that. And then her husband took the stand. He was on the stand most of the day today. And for the first time, we heard secret recordings. Remember how Ian wore a wire to record things that were being said in hopes of finding the children, JJ and Tylee? Well, we heard a lot of what was on those wire calls, and there was like 58 minutes, I believe. We heard a couple of minutes today, and I'll play some of it for you. And then, in kind of an odd moment, as John Pryor was cross-examining Ian, the judge called for a quick sidebar, came out, asked for Garrett Smith, the attorney for the Pawlowskis, to be removed from the courtroom, didn't give an explanation, but then John Pryor proceeded to ask Ian some questions. We'll play you the clip, and just in, I have a response from Garrett Smith, the attorney. I will show you what he has to say about what happened this afternoon in the courtroom with a response I'll have for you shortly. And then, just when you think things couldn't get weirder, apparently Julie Rowe was at the courthouse today. I have not independently confirmed this, but I heard from Vicki Hoban, Tammy Daybell's aunt, and Larry Woodcock that Julie was there and tried to get in the courtroom. We did send Julie Rowe a text message this afternoon to a number we had for her once upon a time. I don't know if it's still the same number, but either way, we wanted to confirm it was indeed her. We'll talk about what happened with that situation. And of course, we will remember JJ, Tylee, and Tammy. Got all that? Buckle up. Let us know where you're watching from. And if you have any questions, I got to pull out my notebook here and talk about the day. So we'll start with FBI agent Steve Daniels. This is what Mr. Daniels looks like, in case you don't remember him. This photo was taken back in 2020 when he took the stand at Chad Daybell's preliminary hearing in Rexburg. He was on the stand Friday, and he was basically the lead guy when they searched Chad Daybell's property for the children back in June of 2020. And on Friday, he talked about Tylee's burial site, and today he talked about JJ's burial site. He talked about how they were led to the tree in the backyard next to the pond that was empty. There was nothing in the pond at that time. And he spoke on how the ground there was a little berm in the ground, and they could tell that the vegetation, like the grass, was not equal in all the area beneath the tree. And it looked like something may have been buried in a particular spot. And so that's where they chose to focus. And they went through, as he described the other day, going through layer by layer, removing a layer of soil, removing the grass, gradually getting down there. And we saw the photos of the stones that were I want to say meticulously, because they were pretty organized. They were lined up there, just in a straight row. And they removed the stones, and there was the plywood. And then underneath the plywood was the body of JJ wrapped in plastic. Black plastic, and then white plastic underneath that with duct tape. At that point, the judge directed that the photos be not shown to the gallery, so all the monitors were turned. The people on the right side of the courtroom moved over to the left so that they couldn't, accidentally see the jurors' monitors. And excuse me, we then the Agent Daniels proceeded to describe the photos and how they cut the plastic, and it was JJ's head, and then they looked down at his feet area, and he just described the gruesome scene. Pryor got up to cross-examine the agent, and he talked about the tools that were in the shed, in Chad Daybell's shed. And he was really trying to make a point on the handle of one of the shovels. He zoomed in really tight, asking if he noticed anything different. We still don't know, at least now, what point he was trying to prove, because Daniels didn't quite understand, and I know I didn't. Maybe that will come out during the defense, that the tools, something was up with the tools. But the point for today was a little bit lost. But there's one part I want to play. We posted this earlier when he was questioning the witness, and John Pryor got a little talking to by Judge Boyce for talking over the witnesses. And this is not the first time Judge Boyce has mentioned this to John Pryor. Here's what happened during that moment. Okay, stand by. One moment. I can hear it, but I don't think you guys can. Okay. Hold on one second here. I'm going to text our tech guy. So apologies about that. Actually, I might be able to do it here. I'll let him do it. Okay, sorry about that. So the judge basically said, and I'll play it for you here in a minute, that John Pryor, you need to, when you ask a question, you need to let the witness answer and not talk over me or the witness. But here's the interesting thing during that moment. He asked the witness a question, and then John Pryor objected to the witness's answer. I don't know if I've heard that before, where the person objects to the own witness's answer. At least I haven't in this trial. And then, so he objected to the witness, and then the judge tried to answer, and then Pryor, it was a bunch of crosstalk, and that's when the judge really said, Mr. Pryor, you need to let the witness speak. So we put up the entire testimony of I'll play that for you in just a moment here. I'm going to put up, if Jordan is helping me remote get in so that we can play this audio for you. So once he has that, I'm watching him on my screen. After he testified, then it was time for Melanie Pawlowski to testify. Melanie, for a little bit of background, Lori Vallow's niece. I met Melanie and Ian back in 2020. It was right before Mother's Day, and we did a Zoom interview. This was at the height of COVID. And this is a photo of Melanie and Ian when they spoke with Dateline. And this is, they went on the air and they defended them, Lori and Chad. And again, this was before the kids were found. This was before any of that. And their witness, their testimony has obviously changed since back in 2020 when they were interviewed by Dateline and also by me. So I also have seen them since, and they're very polite. They've been very polite to me, very nice. Melanie, when she walked in today, I almost did not recognize her. and she had on white framed glasses, and she had dark hair. I would show you a close-up clip of her testimony, but the Zoom video makes it so that it's really hard to see. The image is pixelated. But I want to play a clip before I get to what was said today from the interview I did with them back in 2020. Just them explaining how they met. Because so many people were asking, how did Ian and Melanie meet? They had both been married before. We had heard about the attempted shooting of Brandon, Melanie's ex, in Arizona. And what happened down there in Arizona. And this is how Ian described how they met. Cross your fingers in hopes that this plays.
Yeah, I feel better meeting people in person, so invited her out to
okay.
dinner.
We got it. Yes, thank you, Jordan. I'm going to rewind that. Here we go. Here's Ian describing how they met. Thank you, Jordan.
I downloaded some dating apps and found Melanie on one of them and asked her on a date that day. I figured, I hate talking to people through text. I don't feel like I communicate well over text, or I can't. I'm sarcastic a lot, and so that doesn't come across well in text sometimes. So I just wanted to. I feel better meeting people in person. So invited her out to dinner. We went to McKenzie River.
Sorry, what month was this, Ian?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, so this was November.
So Melanie, you had moved to Rexburg.
Yeah, the first week in November, I moved to Rexburg.
So you both were already in the same town together.
Right.
We were across the street from each other.
Yeah, we actually found that out.
And you didn't know that?
I didn't even know, yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you went to McKenzie River.
Yeah, she was just, I don't know how to describe it other than she just, everything just kind of clicked with her. We'd had so many similar experiences with the way our divorces went, the way the last year of our lives had gone with just the struggles, and we understood each other. I found no judgment with her, no preconceived notions. She just wanted to get to know me, and we spent the next 2 days basically just talking constantly. It was, I guess with the previous people I dated, it felt like I was trying to make up reasons to continue to date those people, to go on a second date or whatever. But with her, it was just easy. It clicked, and I didn't have to try to do mental gymnastics to justify a second date.
And then you got married shortly thereafter, right?
Correct. So, yeah, one of the things that I really loved, one of the things that I guess that led to us getting married so quickly was our children. I learned that, she had 4 kids, and I absolutely love that. She said she saw my dating profile, that one of the first things I put in my bio, I guess, is that I'm a dad. I've got 2 kids. I love them with all my heart. And I want them to be a big part of our lives. And I didn't want anybody to be a part of my life that wasn't going to be supportive of my role as a father to my two children. And it's the same with her. I still haven't had the opportunity to meet her kids yet, and I can't wait. But seeing her interact with my kids for the first time, we came to Arizona. I came down with my 2 children to have Thanksgiving with my family, and she came down a few days later. And on her way down, she was talking about how she didn't have anybody to go to Thanksgiving with, and so I invited her to come be with my family. It was kind of a spur of the moment thing. And so she showed up, and my kids immediately fell in love with her. They, my daughter, she can be a little shy, a little standoffish, and just immediately was attached to Melanie. Wanted to just take her around and show her everything she'd been doing, play games with her, tell her everything that's on her mind. My daughter she has no filter, so she'll just say exactly what she's thinking. And just to see Melanie interact with my kids, it just made me fall really hard, really fast for her, because she's just so sweet and good with them.
At one point, I had gotten out of the car to go run into the gas station on our road trip, and Lily said to Ian, "Don't blow it, Dad."
Well, I don't think you blew it. You guys were married shortly thereafter, right after Thanksgiving?
Right. Yeah. November 30th.
November 3rd.
It was really fast. And, I was in this, battle still with my ex and didn't have my kids with us right then, but we felt both ready. We pray about decisions together, and we felt, that it was right that we should get married when we did. And, Vegas wedding wasn't dreamy or anything, but our goal was to be sealed in the temple, one day. And so we said, let's do this while we have Max and Lily. And then when we have Braxton, Brighton, Blake, and Breeze too, let's all be together when we have that special day where we can be sealed together.
Okay, so that I realized was probably 4 years ago this week when I did that interview. It was in 2020. Again, COVID, I couldn't travel to Arizona and interview them. Many of you have asked if they're still married. They are still married. They have had children together, so their family has expanded. And they were both in the courthouse today. And obviously things have changed significantly since that interview. And I believe their feelings have changed. I know their feelings have changed based on how they testified today about Chad and Lori and whatnot. We have that entire interview. We split it into 3 parts. I think it's over an hour total. If you go to our YouTube channel, East Idaho News YouTube, and type in Melanie Ian Pawlowski, it will come up if you want to go back and watch what they had to say. Again, before the kids were found, before Lori was in jail, but Chad was not, all that. So let's jump right to it because there's so many things that they talked about today. First, Melanie was asked about when she met Chad and his teachings. And were the teachings coming from him or were they coming from Lori? Here's what she said.
When you met, do you recall approximately when you met Chad?
I believe in November of 2018.
Did you continue to interact with Chad from that point on?
Through Lori.
So when you say through Lori, would you communicate with Chad through Lori?
She would say, Chad said to tell you this, or it would be mostly through Lori for the most part.
Would you also send messages to Chad through Lori?
Yes.
Did that include you asking Chad for guidance or advice?
Yes.
Would you say at some point you developed a close relationship with Chad?
Yes.
At some point, did you eventually begin referring to him as Dad?
Yes.
At some point, did Lori and Chad begin sharing teachings with you or their purported beliefs?
Yes.
Do you recall them sharing some teachings regarding light and dark?
Yes.
Do you recall which one of them, or if it was both of them that shared those things with you?
Both.
And when you say both, at times, were they both together when they shared those with you?
Both together and separate.
So at times just Lori would share them,
Yes.
and at times just Chad would share them. Is that fair?
I don't know if I remember a time where it was just Chad. I do remember them being together and then with just Lori.
And with what Lori was teaching you, do you know where those ideas were originating from?
I believe they came from Chad.
Okay, so you will find Lindsay Blake consistently through the testimony today, through Ian and Melanie, tried to stress that these teachings were coming from Chad. Chad was the originator of them, and that Melanie would go to Lori, who would go to Chad, and back and forth. Now, many of you have asked, why do they say at some point? Why do they continually say at some point, at some point? Well, if the witness can't quite remember, and to get to the point, you can say at some point, do you recall this? At some point, do you recall this? It keeps the testimony moving along, rather than saying, in October of 2018, do you recall this? Melanie was very close to Lori. Melanie lost her mom. Her mom died when she was young and took to Lori like a mother. And then when Brandon testified last week or 2 weeks ago that Melanie started going to these preparing conferences and these preparing classes with Lori, came home one day and said, we need $10,000 of food storage, was into the belief system according to Brandon's testimony and even some of what Melanie and Ian said today. So then she brought up the zombies and the light and the dark, and Lindsay Blake had some more questions about that.
Do you recall what they taught you or told you in relation to light and dark?
From what I remember, Chad was said to have a gift to spiritually discern, and he could see light and dark, or if a person had good intentions, but that he could see through and had that gift.
And did you ever learn about him having some kind of a tool or something that he would use to help him discern light and dark?
Yes.
What did you learn about that?
That he had a pendant or like necklace, something to that effect, that he could like a pendulum kind of thing, or he could get an answer to something he wanted to know.
And it looks like, and just for the record, it looks like you were making a swinging motion with your hand. Is that correct?
That's what I've seen from other people that will use like a tool or something like that, I think you swing it, and if it swings one way, it means yes or no. I'm not sure exactly.
And was it your understanding that Chad always had to use that tool to discern light and dark?
From what I remember being told is that he didn't always need that. It was just something extra he could use.
At some point, did Chad and Lori teach you about castings?
Yes.
What do you recall them teaching you regarding castings?
From the basis of where it comes in the scriptures, where you raise actually, I don't even know if that specifically is in the scriptures, but where you raise your right hand and can cast out a dark spirit or a demon. But they would explain how to do that, and the correct way to do that, or sharing different ideas on how what that could mean.
And did they teach you who castings would be done on or for?
Yes.
And who were those individuals?
That you could do, you could cast out at any time for anybody if you feel like you're being inflicted with some type of dark spirit or a bad feeling, that anybody at any time could raise the right hand to the square and cast out.
Did you participate in any castings?
Yes.
Do you recall who those castings were done on or for?
I remember one where Lori invited us over to do a casting on Charles.
And
or
had,
for Charles.
oh, sorry.
Sorry.
And you said it was done on Charles?
Yes.
Had you been told anything in relation to Charles being dark at that point?
I think at that time they believed, and Lori and Chad believed, Charles was affected by some type of dark spirit.
Okay, so Melanie moved to Rexburg, right in the same complex as Lori and Alex, and really was into this stuff. Now, John Pryor tried to, on cross-examination, tried to get Melanie to say that this was all kind of mainstream LDS, the castings, the lights, and the light and the dark, and did it more so with Ian, but they basically said, no, I mean, this was like a step further. Maybe the base knowledge was LDS stuff, but Chad and Lori were then tweaking it and doing their own thing about it, about their own blessings and whatnot. At one point, Lori asked Melanie, or Melanie was asked, what happened when she asked her aunt, where's Tylee, where's JJ? Remember, they're her cousin, and she knew them. She lived near them in Arizona, and she moved to Rexburg, and there's no JJ or Tylee. And here is how Lori answered that question, according to Melanie.
Did you ask Lori where Tylee was?
Yes.
What did she tell you?
I got a few different answers, but one I remember clearly was that she was with a friend from college at BYU, and that she was kind of doing her own thing. But that's one of the main answers that she would give.
Did you ask where JJ was?
Yes.
What did she tell you about JJ?
She said she had hired a nanny there in the area and that the nanny helped a lot with JJ.
Prior to going up there to visit, had you spoken with Lori on the phone?
Yes.
Did you ever hear Tylee or JJ in the background?
Not that I remember.
During that
Melanie
visit,
went-
did you see Chad Daybell?
I don't remember if I did or didn't.
All right, there we go. Melanie went on to go on a trip with Lori to Hawaii and to Missouri, 2 trips. JJ and Tylee were not with them on the trips. And Melanie was asked, when you went to Hawaii, did you ask Lori, where's JJ? Tylee at that point was older. That might make sense. She's at the university, has her friends, whatever. But JJ, and she said she recalls asking, believes that Lori said that she was probably with the nanny. Well, Melanie moves to Rexburg. She meets Ian. They get married very quickly. I think he said, 2 weeks? They were married by the end of November. Alex dies a few weeks later. Kids are missing. Lori and Chad take off. They flee from Rexburg. So then it's like Melanie and Ian, like, alone when their support system left. But when Tammy died, Melanie was in Hawaii with Lori. And that's how she found out Tammy was dead. And here's how she recalls learning the news and what she remembers Lori's reaction being.
At some point while you were there, you learned of Tammy's passing, though.
Yes.
How did Lori seem to be?
She, from what I could tell, seemed in a state of shock, just surprised.
Did Lori head back to Idaho after that?
Yes.
Did you head back to Idaho right away?
No, I stayed longer.
Was someone else supposed to go on the trip with you and Lori to Hawaii?
I think I found out later that Alex was going to come with us on that trip.
Why didn't Alex go?
Lori said Chad had something that he needed help with.
So Alex was supposed
At
to be in
some
Hawaii,
point-
apparently.
Did Chad or Lori talk to you about the Church of the Firstborn?
Yes.
What, if anything, did they indicate in relation to Chad's role with the Church of the Firstborn?
That Chad believed he was to help organize and learn more about the Church of the Firstborn.
Did Chad and Lori ever share with you what they believed their mission in this world to be?
I believe it was to help with the second coming of Jesus Christ.
And we'd talked about the dark and light and you turning to Chad for advice. Were those some of the things that you would ask Chad if someone was dark or light?
Yes.
At some point, did you learn a different term for people that were possessed?
Yes.
And what was that term?
Zombie.
Do you recall who introduced that term to you?
I believe it was Lori.
At some point, did Chad or Lori also talk to you about what it meant if someone was possessed or became a zombie, where the actual person would go?
Yes.
What did you learn in regards to that?
So that there was some type of darkness that you couldn't cast out. And so if this, that the Lord in his due time would have to take, that person would pass away because this darkness was too much or something like that.
So if someone were to be possessed and with a strong enough entity, essentially the body would have to die.
Judge, that's leading, calls for
Sustained.
speculation.
That's sustained on leading.
If someone became too dark, would the body have to die?
Judge, leading.
Overruled.
I believe so. That I think that was their idea, that they would pass away because they couldn't have this darkness inside them, or that it overtook them.
So she was taught this. She participated in the castings. She gets married. And that's when Ian, that night, their wedding night, goes to the cops. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Ian's testimony, we heard those recordings that we have never heard before, and we learned a lot more about what Chad and Lori were telling Melanie and Ian. And it's pretty interesting. Now, I do want to play a bit by Pryor. Pryor was getting up to cross-examine Melanie and really trying to get her to say that, well, it seemed, was trying to get her to say that these beliefs all came from Lori. Lori. That's, the defense move, that it wasn't Chad, it was Lori. And here's how Melanie answered his questions, at least part of it.
The vast majority of the information that you received about Chad came only from Lori. Is that fair?
Yes, most everything came through Lori.
So you didn't confirm any of this with Lori. You basically took your aunt's word when she said Chad talked about these various topics. Would that be fair?
Yes.
Okay. And when Lori talked about moving from Arizona up to Idaho, you indicated that she wasn't particularly clear actually where she was going to move at that point. Would that be fair?
Yes.
In fact, there was a discussion with Lori at the time after Charles's death that she talked about living with Melanie Gibb. Do you recall that?
I didn't know she planned to live with Melanie Gibb.
She never told you that?
That doesn't sound familiar at all.
Okay.
So just a little bit of the cross-examination on Melanie. Melanie was on the stand about an hour, a little less than an hour. She finished her testimony, and then Ian, her husband, was called. Now, Ian did testify at Lori Vallow's trial last year, but this year was so much more. And I do wonder why the prosecution didn't bring in the recordings last year at the trial. And I don't know why. Maybe they felt like they had enough for Lori and they saved it for this trial, or maybe in the recordings it shows more of an influence of Chad. What we do know is that the recordings were, I think Lindsay Blake said, like 58 minutes total, and they just played little clips today. So there's so much more. They did admit the entire thing is evidence, meaning if the jury wants, they can go back and listen to it all. But in order to save time and be efficient, Lindsay Blake went through and played bit by bit. The first clip that I'll play for you is Ian describing going to Chad and Lori for permission to marry Melanie. Now remember, Melanie looked at Chad and Lori like they were her parents, and, Ian wanted their blessing. They weren't in town, though. Remember, this time, end of November-ish, they have fled. Ian didn't know where they were, and they were sporadic in their communication. Sometimes they'd call back, sometimes they'd go days with no contact. They had all these burner phones. Numbers were getting changed all the time. He finally got a hold of him on Zoom, and he asked Dad, Chad, for permission, and Lori for permission to marry Melanie. And here's how that conversation went.
At a later date, did you have a conversation with Chad and Lori over Zoom?
Yes.
Why did you have that call with them?
It was to ask their blessing in marrying Melanie
And why did you want to ask their blessing in marrying her?
because of how I understood the relationship that they had.
What did you understand about Melanie's relationship with them?
That Melanie had a kind of a parental view on them. Chad and Lori were kind of guides and supports to her at that point in her life.
When you reached out to them on Zoom, did the call actually take place?
Yes.
Did you end up asking for their blessing?
Yes.
Did they give it to you?
Yes.
Do you recall anything else that happened during that call?
They gave me, in addition to, giving me a blessing, or saying, they approve of me marrying Melanie. They gave me a religious blessing.
Was anything strange about the religious blessing to you?
It was unorthodox based on the LDS beliefs that I held at the time. They He talked about shielding me with light, removing dark weapons from me. The fact that it did not occur in person. Typically, you know, in LDS faith, when you receive a blessing, it's by the laying on of hands and not over Zoom.
Had you ever had a blessing like that before?
No.
Did you end up saying anything about thinking it was a little odd?
Yeah.
Did you say it to Chad and Lori at that time?
No, I said it to Melanie.
Okay, think about it. Ian likely, I don't know him too well, but likely came from a traditional LDS home, as he said, where he'd never seen blessings on Zoom. And this was a blessing on Zoom. Meaning, not just, yeah, we give you our blessing, you can marry Melanie, that's great, but we're also going to give you a blessing through the Church of the Firstborn through Zoom. And Lori was participating in it. And I'm sure to him it was just weird. And he said it was weird. And he told Melanie after the fact, that was a little weird. Well, then there was more blessings. In fact, he said almost every time that they spoke to Chad, there was blessings. There was a blessing, like a prayer. And that Lori would join in, and they'd call in Alex and Zulema to be part of it. And I don't know if Melanie Gibb and David were called in, because at this point they were questioning Melanie Gibb going to the police. So they were kind of on the outs with the group. But there was just all of these blessings being given all of the time. And they were long blessings, and they were, you know, weird terminology that was foreign to Ian about weapons and all that sort of stuff. Here's a little bit more of what he said.
Had Melanie shared, you said you mentioned the blessing was odd
Right.
to Melanie. At any point, did Melanie share some of the beliefs she'd been taught?
Yes.
At some point, did you start hearing some of those beliefs or teachings from Chad and Lori?
Yes.
When Melanie was sharing those with you, was that prior to your marriage?
Yes. There was some that was shared prior to my marriage. And then the bulk of it was the night that we got married.
Initially, were you somewhat open to some of the ideas she was sharing?
Yes.
How long did you remain open to those ideas?
Until the night we got married.
What changed that night?
The weight of what she was sharing, the implications of what she was sharing, it was just hearing that she feared that Tylee and JJ may have been in danger at that time, and the behavior that she was seeing from Chad and Lori at that time.
Did what she shared with you cause you concern?
Yes.
Did something happen that next morning to amplify your concern?
Yes. That next morning, my daughter thought it would be funny to play hide and seek. And so I got up, I was looking for her. She would not answer. It was quiet in that hotel room for about 5 minutes. I couldn't find her. And then I heard some giggling. She was behind a curtain.
Based on what was shared with you, did you have concerns for the safety of JJ and Tylee?
Yes.
Did you have concerns for other people's safety?
Yes, I did.
Who were those individuals?
My 2 children and my ex-wife.
Pause for a minute and think if you're in his shoes, that these 2 kids are missing. There's this weird religious belief. You've just gotten married and your daughter's missing, and then you're worried about what your ex-wife, her safety, and the kids. Okay, so what are the beliefs? What did he say? What did Melanie tell him? They went into it a little bit today, but tonight I want to go into a bit more because we have it written down. Ian wrote down and gave to the police what Melanie told him. And we've reported on this before years ago, but for some of you, so many of you are brand new to this case. I'm just going to read through this. I'll put it on the screen, and this is what Ian himself wrote. When Melanie began sharing all these things with me, I tried to keep an open mind. I'd only met her 4 days previous, but felt very comfortable around her. I believe there's more to the gospel than what I've seen so far, but I never thought it would sound like this. The ideas seemed harmless at first, and she sounded pretty certain of some of them. She talked about how she'd learned some of the things in the temple and others from Chad and Lori. Upon first meeting Chad and Lori, I didn't get a bad impression of them, but they did seem different. I didn't think anything of that, as I feel that's a fairly normal feeling to experience. I didn't give them much thought, as they said they were planning on taking off and that I'd be taking the reins concerning the care of Melanie. They said they were going to Hawaii and invited me to come visit sometime. Melanie later explained porting, and that they could travel there by that method. The first thing hearing all of these new beliefs was a jolt. I was looking for someone spiritual, but this was a leap beyond that into concerning territory. I had doubts and fears, but I trusted Melanie and wanted to give it a fair chance. So I continued to listen and ask questions in hopes it would click for me. It never did. There were fun and exciting ideas, but it felt like many of them were ripped straight out of a Dungeons and Dragons manual. Between the stats, accounts of dark and light weapons, and words spoken in blessings, it sounded like someone had created a tabletop RPG based on the Bible. While living something like that appealed to me, I couldn't find anything to confirm it as I prayed and asked. I figured anyone called to something like this would struggle, but how else would they be made aware of things like this? I continued to try to keep an open mind and proceed with caution. Melanie began to share that she feared for the lives of her 2 children based on a dream she'd had where they came to her. They brought her tidings of great joy. Her daughter thanked her for allowing her the freedom to use her agency until the end. This concerned me and made my heart ache for her. I felt there was no way anything could have happened without people finding out. We married faster than any sane couple would, but we both felt it was right. On our wedding night, she began to elaborate on the ideas she shared earlier and her children coming to her. She explained zombies and her fears about what Chad and Lori stated concerning the original spirits being caught in limbo until the body's death. She stated that Brandon had been possessed by a demon or another dark entity sometime after June of this year. She was told, either through revelation or by Chad, or that something would happen to him, that something needed to happen to him in order for his spirit to progress and for the Lord's plan to continue. She didn't take well to the idea of her husband dying as part of the Lord's plan, but didn't think action would be taken by anyone. She still loves Brandon and would never wish ill on him. It just sounded to her like it was something that happened on its own when it was his time. This is where things started becoming concerning to me. She shared the idea that Chad and Lori could have directed Al, meaning Alex Cox, to take a shot at Brandon. It wasn't anything she was sure about. The concern began when she was called into the Gilbert PD and asked about Chad, Lori, and Alex after the attempt on Brandon's life. She later was given the impression that the bullet needed to move 5 inches so as to not hit Brandon. Initially, to me, it sounded like that was told to her by Chad. The discussion moved to Chad and Lori's missing children. At the time, only JJ was counted as missing, and the Rexburg PD had concluded raids on Melanie's apartment along with Al's. Melanie had been told by Chad and Lori that their children had been possessed and had become zombies. She shared concerns that she's been told Brandon needed to die, and that may indicate that Tylee and JJ needed to do so as well. She told me she was worried that Al may have had to, quote, take care of the kids. She explained that Al had great faith and never wavered in his trust in the Lord. No task would be too difficult or great for him. When I asked for clarification, she restated her concern verbatim. At this point, I became severely worried, but told myself there's no way I just married into a situation so sinister. I spent the next 2 days trying to justify my actions and reassure myself that everything was fine, but I couldn't get to that point. My ex-wife, Natalie, had been asking for Melanie's name so she can check her out on social media and get an idea of who she is. Melanie had been adamant that I not share her full name with anyone for fear Brandon may locate and harass her. I couldn't justify that and eventually gave Natalie Melanie's full name. On Tuesday, December 2nd, I got a call from my mother. She'd just gotten off the phone with Natalie. When we divorced, Natalie made a point to cut herself off from my entire family and hadn't spoken to any of them for at least 8 months. She had made as little contact with me as possible, but hadn't been unkind since the initial contact of my divorce. My mother told me she'd just received a video call from Natalie. Natalie was terrified. She'd managed to reach Brandon through his business and heard his side of things. She'd been told Melanie was in a cult and that she had tried to have him killed. While I didn't and still don't believe she had anything to do with his attempted murder, I was terrified at the possibility. That next morning on the way to work, Natalie called and we were discussing how to handle this in order to keep our kids safe. She told me she'd be going in to meet with the police. I told her I'd go along and lay out everything I understood. I saw 2 possibilities. The first was that Melanie isn't who I thought she was, and I keep myself and my family out of a dangerous situation. The second was that Melanie had been taken advantage of, and I'm going to get her out of a messy situation and healed. While meeting with the police, I intended to share things as I understood. Detectives Hope and Hermosillo were present along with FBI agent named Ricky. I've since shared all of my concerns with Melanie and had gotten clarification on some of them. What I shared with the police were the ideas that Chad, Lori, and Alex may have planned shooting at Brandon, and that Tylee and JJ may be in serious danger. If Melanie's fears have any validity, if shooting at Brandon was indeed based on the idea that he was no longer actually Brandon and needed to die as part of the Lord's plan, then the kids' lives could be forfeited based on the idea that they're not part of the Lord's plan. The kids' lives could have been forfeited based on the idea that they're not really Tylee and JJ anymore. I shared that Melanie had concerns about them participating in the shooting and was against anyone trying to hurt him. She couldn't see them doing these things, but she also knew they could follow the Lord's will as she saw it. I shared ideas about earthquakes being prepared in Salt Lake City, and that it was believed that there would be a time when the quakes hit that many possessions would occur there due to high number of injured there would be. Such a thing would be a huge threat to God's plan and would need to be dealt with directly. Alan Zulema had stayed in Las Vegas and were, quote, preparing earthquakes at the time I spoke with the police. I shared concerns for the safety of my kids and Natalie. I offered to help in any way I could. I then allowed them to pull data from my phone. I met with them again the following afternoon and restated that I knew for a few other detectives, Lieutenant Ball and another FBI agent, Travis. They shared some mild concern about me potentially spying for Chad and Lori. I explained that I was there. So the police thought he was there spying on behalf of Chad and Lori. But he says, I explained that I was there because I was concerned primarily for the safety of my kids and that I wanted to get Melanie out of this if possible. They gave me a recording device that looked like a thumb drive on a keychain. My plan was to record anything I thought I could help locate Tylee and JJ, locate Chad and Lori, and understand what happened when Brandon was shot at. If I thought Chad and Lori were going to be calling, I'd turn on the recorder and just let it run until they'd hang up. I don't feel that anything substantial was recorded, as Chad and Lori never talked about the kids or their location. Most of the conversations consisted of everyone commiserating about the current circumstances, discussing religious ideas, or just catching up. In addition to the recordings, I would talk with Ricky, and he'd let me know about things that may come up in conversation. He was never specific, but would give me enough information for me to know what came up. These tips turned into Tammy's body being exhumed and Al's passing. On December 19th, Detective Hermosillo contacted me and told me they had another warrant for Al's apartment next door. He asked if I'd give them the code to the garage so they would have to break the door in. I shared the code. I didn't see any reason not to. They went in with the forensics team and looked for any evidence that JJ had been there. Melanie saw them there and spent the afternoon at my apartment. That night, I went to the apartment and looked around to see what they had been doing or if they'd taken anything. I also wanted to see the warrants to understand what they'd been looking for. After looking around, I went to see Melanie at my apartment. I finally broke down and told her I'd spoken with the police and that I don't believe any of this. I didn't know how she would react, but I couldn't hang on to the stress anymore. Of course, she was hurt, feeling betrayed, but she reassured me that she loves me and that she understands why I did it. At that time, I didn't share that I'd been recording anything. I wasn't sure if we'd hear from Chad and Lori again. Over the following week, we had discussions about our situations, and I came to understand things a little better. She was legitimately afraid of the ideas I'd shared with the police and FBI, but they weren't anything she had proof of. As I've spoken with her and dug into the details, I've come to believe she truly doesn't know anything about who shot at Brandon or where the kids have gone. She only has what-if scenarios that she shared. I'm worried that I jumped the gun and have sent the authorities on yet another wild goose chase, along with prompting them to light up the national media with pieces of what I've shared. My intent was to protect my family and help solve the case of the kid's disappearance, not smear anyone in the public eye. I certainly didn't want to give Brandon any ammo to hurt Melanie any more than he already has. I still have my doubts. Primarily, why not turn to the police first instead of disappearing if you claim your life's in danger? Talking about Chad and Lori. Also, why leave your innocent niece here to clean up the mess and encourage her not to cooperate with authorities? Why encourage her not to fight for her kids? Her ex-husband now has temporary sole custody as a result. Why not simply provide proof that the kids are okay and put an end to the insanity? Isn't it odd that the two detectives assigned to your case happen to be two of Chad's dark 50? Cain's dark 50, like Cain and Abel, Cain's dark 50. Everyone trying to do their job and save these kids are either evil or deceived. Your kids are missing and it doesn't come up once during a handful of lengthy conversations. There are so many more that I have. I don't want to have anything to do with these two after this. Melanie and I have been put through the ringer because of their paranoia, and now is in the hot seat because I went to the police and tried to help. I know she's done nothing wrong and I want her free from this. I will no longer openly cooperate with the police or the FBI, but I will through a lawyer. My final straw was that I received a call on Friday from Ricky where he threatened charges of lying to a federal officer and or being an accessory in the disappearance of Tylee and JJ because Melanie couldn't clearly answer questions about the religious aspects of the investigation. After I shared my doubts with her, her world shattered. She couldn't answer those questions because she doesn't know what she believes about these things anymore. There was so much information dumped on her by Chad or Lori, she can't remember what she learned from them, from the podcast they listened to, or from her own, or on her own. A 20-year veteran FBI agent throwing a hissy fit about one shaky interview tells me all I need to know about how they want to handle this. She didn't trust authorities before because of how poorly the AF treated her when she went to pick up her kids with a court order in hand. Okay.
Horrible. Is he one of the bad ones?
Yeah, him and the Hope are the two bad ones.
I wondered if it was Lieutenant Ball. Lieutenant Ball kept bringing me food and water, and I was like, is he poisoning me? He's like, here's some fresh banana bread. And I was like, I don't know about this banana bread.
He's probably good. The other ones are good.
Hope, you said?
Hope and your guy, your Messina guy, those are the two bad ones.
Yeah, so he has all my stuff.
And stopping at 14 minutes, 44 seconds. In there, do you hear the reference that Hope and Hermosillo are the bad ones?
Yes.
Do you know where Hope and Hermosillo work?
Yes.
Where do they work?
Rexburg Police Department.
Next, I will be going to mark 20 minutes, 38 seconds.
So,
What you know about you?
just that she's not good. She's doubting and falling because of Dave.
Just that she's gonna go tell the police that she's like,
Yeah, and throw all of us under the bus. I don't know, that makes sense. Remember, I always got that thing about her that, yeah, and I was like, so I was just mama bear claws towards you. Like, I was like,
trust her.
yeah, well, the Lord kept saying, like, Melanie, like, you don't trust her, but just let Lori have her, experience with that. And I just keep, doing what I'm doing. And it bothered me because I was like, I want to trust her because you trust her. And I kept getting something else. So it makes sense now, I guess.
It's Dave that's causing the problem.
Yeah. Well,
how do you see it going, I guess?
I think you said that it's bad for her in every way. Because we can't trust her anymore, because that for one. For two, it ruins her place with us, but for three, you call the police and you tell them that you're a liar, and then you try to tell them something that's the truth, they're gonna be like, you just said you were a liar.
Right,
So I don't know if I trust that at all.
right.
So you kind of shoot yourself in the foot. You call them, tell them that you lied, and then try to tell them the truth.
Right.
So I don't see it going anywhere bad for any of us.
And stopping at 22 minutes, 18 seconds. Mr. Pawlowski, do you hear in there again talk of Dave and Melanie?
Yes,
Do you know which Dave they're referencing?
yeah, it's still David Warwick,
And the Melanie?
Melanie Gibb.
And did you hear in there again talk of Melanie was going to go to the police and tell him she lied?
Yes,
And do you hear Lori's responses that there's going to be three things for her?
right,
One, that she's essentially lost her place with this group. Is that correct? One, she has all this knowledge and she may be accountable for it.
yes,
And third, that now she's going to go tell the police the truth after lying.
yes.
Okay, so you heard it in there that Lori is getting a little worried, or so it seems, that Melanie's going to the police now, and Melanie has all this knowledge, and Melanie Gibb, not Melanie Pawlowski, Melanie Gibb. She's got all this knowledge. She was foreordained. She knew all this stuff, and now she's turning dark. And David, her boyfriend, is the evil influence on her that's causing her to think like this and go to the cops like this. And she's telling Melanie Pawlowski this, and this kind of is a continual theme, at least in the clips we heard today, that Melanie Gibb is an evil influence on this. We go on to hear more about these recordings. And remember, every time Chad and Lori are calling, Ian's getting out his keychain, I don't know where my keys are, and kind of holding it up there, and Melanie has no idea. Well, then, remember, also, Melanie has just moved to Rexburg, met Ian, and then everyone takes off or dies, if you're Alex. And suddenly, when the police get interested, including the dark police, Hermosillo and Hope, it's time for Melanie to go, according to Chad. It's time for them to move. Just temporarily, not get an Airbnb, but move. Here's what Melanie testified about in that exchange.
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna keep going and going. What can they possibly do?
Well, he says he's not gonna stop until, until they get what they want. So I don't know. There's some.
So you need to get out of that complex.
Okay.
Not rush out of there, but they're not gonna leave you alone. I could sense the network pretty deep, and they're gonna see you as the target since you're the only one that they really can find at the moment. For your own sake, for your own sanity, you bet.
Okay.
We know you were led there, and it worked for 2 months for us as we planned and got together, and you found Ian, and now a different phase of your life has begun.
So his kids are in Rexburg and Natalie,
I know. You don't have to move super far away.
just a different city.
Yeah. Madison County, probably.
Well, it's in Rexburg.
I'm not saying you got to decide tonight. The tech complex went from a blessed place to a cursed place due to the
Yeah.
wickedness of the police.
No, we did not expect the police to be that wicked.
Well, and if it is just gonna be a couple weeks, like we could do an Airbnb and just stay in Idaho Falls somewhere. I mean, Ian works there. And that's close enough to where we could go pick up the kids and they wouldn't even know that we're not in Rexburg. But do you feel like a whole physical change of address and moving everything to a new place is what will be best?
know it's pain. I think they're not gonna leave you alone, so you're out of that city.
Like the Saints in Missouri, I just keep moving and I can't find a safe place.
Maybe. Even sugar, even like, you know.
So how do you get Aramitio to stop? Cause he's not gonna stop. He's so like raged with this whole thing. He was just pacing, like yelling at me, like he's like, I'm not gonna stop for anything. And how do you resolve that, I guess?
You get out of it.
Okay.
He's not going anywhere. It's like the standard story where the wicked stay in one place and the righteous flee. In this case, it's not a whole community, it's you. You and Ian fleeing out of the way of darkness. Like Lehi had to leave Jerusalem. I wasn't expecting this to go on and on, but do every 2 weeks. Maybe get on Zillow or whatever website and just investigate a little bit.
I saw a cute little house for sale in Ashton's further from your work. So probably
40 minutes.
Probably Idaho Falls will be the best. That way you're close to it. But isn't Rexburg like the place of safety when all things happen?
Yeah, but there's been lots of prophecies about major turmoil there. The plague's gonna sweep through Rexburg. Civil unrest. I had a vision of Second East where McDonald's is and everything. Just chaos, people starving, fighting. So there is still a stretch of bad times coming to Rexburg before City of Light. So we had to kind of pave the way, and we were told to flee.
Mostly because of it's because of agency, right? We were all told to go there, and that was where we were supposed to stay. And because of the agency of the dark, and because Lucifer is able to negotiate terms still to this day about eternal law, he's been allowed to do certain things that had to force us out with the police. We had no idea the police were infiltrated with such dark people in Rexburg itself proper. So we
Makes sense in retrospect, but you don't think that immediately that little Rexburg would be planted with Cain's translated followers, but that makes
it's
sense.
because of so many light multi-creations being there. And of course, the dark ones are there too. So opposition in all things. So we just feel like it's time to, just because of the situation, not be there for a season.
Yeah.
You don't have to go far. But just get out of their line of sight. For your own sanity. And for Ian to be able to go to work and feel like you're okay there by yourself, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it just feels that way. It just feels kind of eerie when Ian's not there. I just don't want to be there by myself.
Right. I mean, you've done everything to decorate that place so cute, do everything so adorable, but
I'm just looking on Idaho Falls rentals on Trulia, and there's several that are just as good as your apartment there. Little houses, decent sized houses,
yeah, that was really,
for about the same price.
that's really cute.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll go wherever. I'll live in a dumpster with Ian. 'Cause he's so amazing, so.
But Idaho Falls is pretty good price in terms of rentals. Especially this time of year, you should be able to find a nice one.
Okay.
I hate to say that, but it's just pounding me that you need to get out of that city.
Okay.
You did great, babe. You did great with
Oh, we love it. So amazing.
Yeah,
Grateful for you.
he wanted to know, who I went to Arizona with. So I just, I drove with Ian and, yeah, I mean,
Maybe stopping it.
Okay, so there's so much in that recording. First of all, Chad and Lori really want Melanie out of Rexburg. The police have met with Melanie. Chad and Lori are probably worried that the pressure is on. They really want Melanie out of Rexburg. They're saying, go to Idaho Falls. There's beautiful homes. Go to Zillow. Chad's looking at houses, I would imagine. It sounds like he is. And then Melanie's apprehensive. She's like, well, if it's just temporary, why don't we just get an Airbnb? Well, you're going to need to go longer than that. Well, isn't Rexburg the city of righteous, the gathering place, the city of light? And Chad goes on to say, well, I had a vision that people down on 2nd East by McDonald's are going to be starving and that there's bad days ahead before it becomes the city of light. And that's why Lori and I had to flee for a season. And Melanie sounds apprehensive to me, like, well, and I'm sure Ian is thinking, what in the world? In fact, in all of the recordings today, you hear very little of Ian, if any. I don't know if maybe a couple words here and there. But look how valuable those recordings were in the trial today. There are repeated instances where Melanie is contacting Lori and Chad's on the phone, directing them what to do. In a I guess you could say passive aggressive kind of way, like you really need to leave and Chad's really pushing. You really need to go. You really need to leave Rexburg. And they did. They did. They listened to him. Now, here's an interesting moment. As I said, there's so many clippings you can go listen to. As Ian is on the stand testifying, they came with their attorneys, Garrett Smith out of Arizona, and Josh Gardner is Melanie's attorney in Idaho. Both of them were there during Melanie's testimony, sitting in the gallery directly across from their clients. And of course, you're not supposed to nod your head or do anything like that. I did not witness any of that. And then when Ian was on the stand, Garrett Smith stayed in the courtroom. And at one point, as Pryor was asking Ian questions, the judge said, we need to have a sidebar. They left the courtroom and came back in. And the judge said, we need to dismiss the jury quickly. The jury left. And then this happened.
All right, counsel, the court was advised of something that concerned me during the testimony of this witness, nothing that you did, Mr. Pawlowski, but I do have a concern. Mr. Pawlowski has counsel here in the courtroom. The attorney that's here representing Mr. Pawlowski, I'm going to have him exit the courtroom at this time. If the marshals please assist him out of the courtroom, and he's not going to be permitted to remain through the testimony of this witness. Mr. Pryor, if you want to briefly inquire on the issue we raised on the sidebar, you may do that outside of the presence of the jurors, just as to whether or not there was any potential influence of the witness's testimony.
Mr. Pawlowski, the gentleman who was just escorted out of the courtroom, do you know who that is?
Yes, it's Garrett Smith.
That's who?
Garrett Smith.
He's an attorney?
Yes.
And he's licensed in which state?
Arizona.
Okay. And at this point, Mr. Smith was listening to your testimony. Is that correct?
Yes.
And at some point during the testimony, Mr. Smith was nodding his head and acknowledging to you about responses to my questions. Is that in fact true?
No.
Okay.
All right, that concludes the inquiry then, and we'll go ahead and have the jurors return for additional cross-examination. So if everyone would rise for the jurors, we'll go ahead and have the jurors brought back in.
And then the questioning continued. Again, I did not see Garrett nodding, but I don't see everything in there. I see a tenth, a fifth of what's happening. There's so many things going on. I did reach out to Garrett Smith to see if he wanted to provide a statement, and this is what he had to say tonight. I have the utmost respect for the court and this proceeding. I am not sure what I did to be asked to leave, but I can assure you that I did nothing improper, and that was not attempting to signal my client, as he affirmed to the court. I am sorry for any disruption that resulted. So Garrett says Mr. Smith says he did not, signal, he did not do anything to his client, and he apologizes for the disruption. And it was a minor disruption. It wasn't a big thing. But then what happened after court, according to some witnesses, could have been a disruption. Before I get to that, I want to play you the clip that earlier I couldn't play. Many of you are saying, wait, we want to hear it. This was a memorable moment from this morning. Here we go with the judge telling Pryor to listen and not speak over the witnesses or the judge.
One of the reasons we showed you those photos we took was just to show you that it was fairly easy to walk to. As we walked towards that burial, that raised berm, it was pretty easy to distinguish where that burial site was.
And I appreciate that.
It was hidden though.
Judge, I'm going to
Mr. Pryor,
object.
I'm going to object to you talking over the top of his response, Mr. Pryor. Let him finish his answer before.
And Judge, it's non-responsive.
Mr. Pryor, you just ran over me. Stop cutting people off in your cross, please, including me. Let the witness finish, and we'll never get an accurate record if you keep doing that. So please do that.
And Judge, my objection is non-responsive. I asked him about the electronic data. I didn't ask him about the rest of this colloquy.
Your Honor,
Ask another question, Mr. Pryor.
You engaged in the use of electronic data to locate the remains of J.J. Vallow on the 23rd. Is that right?
that was just one of the things we used, the telephone ping information showing that there was a telephone ping in that northeast area by the pond was just one reason or indicator to show us to go look in that area.
Okay, thank you.
When you met, do you recall?
It's not the first time Judge Boyce has told Pryor to stop talking over the witnesses, and maybe it'll be his last. Okay, one other thing before we get to your questions and our memories of JJ and Tylee. As I said, there's just so much tonight. At the end of the day, courtroom, I was one of the last to leave. Vicki Hoban, Tammy Daybell's aunt, was in the hallway and was saying, "Did you see that?" And she was there with Larry Woodcock. She said that Julie Rowe, who has been mentioned a lot in this trial, and Chad Daybell published her books, Julie Rowe tried to get into the courtroom after the afternoon break. That Julie was like in sunglasses and a cap and like a little trying to go incognito. Vicki and Larry were the last to walk in the courtroom before they closed the door, and they said that Julie cut in front of them, and that the marshal or the bailiff, the deputy, said, "Wait, you can't come in here because you're on the witness list." And she wasn't allowed in. I personally did not see this, but Vicki and Larry told this to Lauren Mathias from Hidden True Crime, as well as myself, and that's interesting. Now, many of you were saying, why is she on the witness list? What in the world? It doesn't necessarily mean they're going to call Julie Rowe to be a witness, but they could. They could. It also, because she's under subpoena, she's not supposed to talk to the media or talk about the case. I have met Julie Rowe, and I interviewed her back in 2020. This was me and Julie in our studio at the time. And this was on a Friday. We spoke for about an hour, hour and a half, and then went home for the weekend. And then on the following Tuesday, the children were found on Chad Daybell's property. And the story drastically changed, obviously, because the children had been found. Chad was charged. He was arrested. Things picked up. And so at the time, we felt as a news organization that the interview I did with Julie was no longer relevant and was not really newsworthy because, again, the story had changed. We have thought about maybe, and we've never released the interview, and we've thought about maybe doing it now. I don't know if we will. This is just something we've been talking about. Now that Julie Rowe has been brought into the picture a lot more, she's been discussed a lot more during this trial. Obviously, she was influential on Chad, on the family. Heather Daybell testified that Julie Rowe came to her house with Chad and they were planning out the tent cities as Tammy Daybell and the children were walking behind her. So I don't know. I don't know if we will air that interview, but it will be interesting if she's put on the stand as a witness. And that was today in court. So much. It was a busy Monday. And I think tomorrow we're going to have some more interesting witnesses. So you'll have to stay tuned for that. Here is the photos I want you to see tonight. JJ and Tylee at their happy places. Tylee loved the beach. She loved the water. She loved Hawaii. She loved swimming. And you can tell she's just beaming there on the beach. JJ loves to play. There he is on a playground, on a tire swing, smiling, loving life. And tonight we remember them. And we remember Tammy Daybell, and we remember Charles Vallow and the families who have truly been affected by this nightmare. So JJ and Tylee, we say hi to you and to Tammy. We wish her birthday, again, I mentioned this yesterday, was on Saturday. And you can still make a donation to the Tammy Douglas Daybell Foundation, and that will put books in the hands of children and with teachers. And it can be a big blessing to many. Okay, let's get to your questions quickly and your shout-outs. We have several shout-outs. Shout-outs to the people, the woman and daughter, I forget your name, from Idaho Falls, who brought me a massive bag of Smarties. I won't reach for it today. I'm set on Smarties the rest of the trial. And then another kind woman who brought me a little goodie bag. Thank you. I need to say start bringing me carrots, but really don't, so that then I can eat healthy. Shout-outs, Aaron and Gina Dietz, Faye and Gayleen Harris, Kira Nielsen, thank you. Nan Peterson wants a shout out to the bailiffs. They got their exercise. Yeah, the bailiffs are pretty cool dudes. The security people, all of them are great. Rob and Diane Bennett, Nicole Batten, Allison and Anna Dixon. Hi guys. Linz Anderson. Carol, Catherine, Jenny from Virginia and Utah. They watch every night. They're sisters. Good to see you. Thank you. Kathy Christensen, Shauna Sawyer. Shauna, have we met? Your name sounds familiar. Scott Landu. Thank you. Rye the Guy, awesome. Thank you for watching and supporting us. And Susan N., all the best to you. And to the guy that came up to me today, I forget your name. You were there last year. You had the big soda. He told me that he and his wife go to bed with me every night as they watch this. So thank you very much for watching, and I hope I can keep you company as I do this. One more shout out, a woman who's sad her name hasn't been called. Maya Muhammad from Ireland. Maya, if I ever come to Ireland, I'm coming to see you. Okay, here we go with some questions. You ready? Pam, didn't the police say no one came back to those apartments that were searched? I was confused when Melanie told Chad and Lori they were sleeping at her apartment. I don't know the timeline exactly on that, Pam. Let's see. They got married. Ian lived across the street. They could have been back and forth to get their stuff. But some of the recordings today came out that Chad and Lori basically told Melanie to get rid of all of Alex's stuff, that they didn't need it anymore. And they were debating, could you call up the DI or Goodwill and would they come and pick it up? And I don't know the exact timing on when they were back and forth, but they were. That's all I can say about that. Corey says, have you noticed that Chad is more awake in court since his mom showed up last week? I would say it depends on the witness. You'll notice in some of the clips today that I played, he'll write down notes on his notepad and turn to his attorney and whisper something or show him. So I think some of the witnesses, obviously like the Melanies and the Ians, when these recordings are played, probably pique his interest a little bit more. There has not been much of a reaction when the autopsy photos are shown. I lost my place because I got another message. Okay, shoot. Okay. Do you think details of Lori Vallow Daybell's mental health incompetence will ever be known, or is that information always confidential? Yes, it's sealed. Her health records in Idaho, patient inmate health records are sealed. Unless somebody leaks them to us, which I don't know who that would be, but it could be, we'll never know. What happened during those 9 months at the hospital when Lori was hospitalized, we will never get a report on those. That's just the way the rules are. Cindy asks if sidebars are part of the record. I'm curious about that. Good question, Cindy. Sometimes when they have a sidebar, the court reporter will go with them. And if that's the case, if they need a transcript, of the sidebar, then yes, it is part of the record. Most are not. Most are just off the record conversations. When the defense and prosecution asks a question, then there's an objection before the witnesses answer, and it's sustained. The counsel tries to ask it differently. Another objection for the same reason, sustained, and counsel tries again. It seems that it's tacky just to press it home to the jury. Is that just me? It could, or they're just trying to get an answer to their question. They have to ask it in a different way so that it's not leading, so that it doesn't get a hearsay answer, so that it's relevant, so that it's not asked and answered. So I think that's just the way it is. And I think that's kind of how we kind of expected it so far with this trial. Elena says, I'm not sure how to message a question. I'll ask it here. Good place. Is there an itinerary with upcoming witnesses, or is that kept out of the public? In this trial, the witness list is sealed. Some trials, you have a list of witnesses, but in this one, it's sealed, so we have no idea. We can assume who are coming up, and last night I did predict Melanie and Ian would be on the stand. I didn't know it'd be this soon, but we can assume, but we don't know for sure. Hi, Nate. I can't remember if you told me. Donna and Sam asked this. Will you be going to Arizona to cover Lori's trial? I sure will. Let's hope it's not this year, because I need some time at home. But yes, I will be. It is scheduled to start August 1st. I doubt it will start then. Since Pryor has devoted years to this particular case, how will it affect his future practice? Gene says. Oh, I don't know, Gene. I think that he could get clients off of this. I don't know if he'll ever do another huge high-profile case again for his own sanity, but it could help his practice. I don't know if it'll hurt it. That's a great question. We should follow up with him in like 2 years and see if it's changed. Shane says, now that things are in full swing, can you speak to the splitting of Chad and Lori's cases? Was this the right thing to do? Does it make more sense now that Lori's case is over and Chad's is in full swing? Well, it made sense, and the judge kind of had to do it because Lori wasn't waiving her right to a speedy trial, and they couldn't go forward with a death penalty case on her because the defense simply could not be ready. And that could have created all sorts of issues on appeal. So the judge had to split them. I think we're learning maybe a lot more than we would together, or maybe it would just be an explosive 12-week trial with the both of them there. That would have been amazing to watch, to see how it all played out, especially if Chad does his tactics with Lori in the courtroom that they're doing now. So I guess it was the right thing to do. The bottom line is the right thing to do is if justice is served and we get a fair and unbiased trial and a jury and a verdict and all of that plays out. I'm sure you remember, this is from Peggy Olson, how John Pryor repeatedly used the phrase dug her out of the ground when referring to Tammy's exclamation. He made it sound so disgusting. It will be interesting to see if he uses that phrase in his cross-examination of Steve Daniels when referring to the bodies of the children that were meticulously and methodically excavated from Chad's backyard. I doubt it, don't you? I don't know if he used that phrase this morning, but yeah, he has used it, and yeah, people have paid attention to it. The dug out of the ground. I guess it sounds a little harsh, a little tacky. Jules says, Pryor always seems to be looking to his right on cross. Is he focused on the jury when doing this? I especially like even B gets aggravated and he has to walk away. That question cut off. He does. He will ask the question and look at the jury, or he'll look at the gallery. That's a mannerism of him. He's kind of always done that. But yeah, he is looking at the jury. How did Melanie and Ian meet? Are they still married? Gene, I answered that question tonight. Hope you got that. Lisa says, was there an autopsy on Alex Cox? Yes, there was. We talked about that the other night. And you can go look up a full story on East Idaho News about that. Nadine says, how is Melanie Pawlowski and the others not in jail? I believe she is and was as dangerous as Chad and Lori. How does anyone know that she does not still believe the practice and those insane rituals? I don't get it. Well, the prosecutor obviously did not have enough to charge her, or maybe she was granted immunity for testifying against Chad and Lori. I don't know the answers to that, but I'm sure if they had enough evidence, they would have charged her. As far as the shooting on Brandon, her ex in Arizona, she's not been charged there too. I don't know if that's coming. I don't know where it stands on that case. She could still be under investigation, but as far as this one, no charges. And as far as the others being charged, again, same answer, not being charged. Why is Lori referred to as Lori Vallow when she was legally married to Chad Daybell after Charles's death? Well, in her trial, she wanted to go by Lori Daybell and repeatedly insisted upon that. This trial, though, it's different. They don't want her to be associated with Daybell, her defense attorney. They don't want any association with Daybell. She's her own person. Don't associate her with Chad. My thoughts. That's what John Pryor is doing, and so it's called Vallow. Is Chad in shackles? No, he's not, Christopher. But I did see a anklet, like a bracelet, a monitor on his leg that I think tracks him, but he's not in shackles. Cheryl, today we heard that Chad told Melanie that Brandon had a track on her car. Had we heard this before? I had heard that before. I don't know if we'd heard it publicly, like in a court setting, but I knew, I was aware of that. He was worried about his kids. That was one of the main things, and he didn't know she was looking for, got some of his money and stuff. So there was, concerned at everything that was happening, and so that's why I believe he, put the tracker on the car. Can the prosecution still call Chad's kids to the stand, or is it Pryor the only one? Will Wood have to wait until Pryor calls him to the stand? Well, the prosecutors could serve them a subpoena, and they would have to answer the subpoena and show up. I don't know if they've been served that subpoena. We know Pryor has served them, or at least they're willing to testify. I don't know if he actually gave them a subpoena. And if that's the case, they would have to wait till Pryor calls them to the stand, but then the prosecutors get a go at answering them questions. Fitness Guy. Hi, Fitness Guy. Can you reach out to Emma and Garth separately after the trial to get an interview? I would love to hear what they have gathered since the trial. I would love to talk to Emma and Garth and Seth and all of the children, or one of the children. Absolutely. And I will attempt to get that interview, but I don't know if it will happen. Any word on how Lori feels about being thrown under the bus and being painted as a Jezebel? From what I've heard, Lori is, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. I think Lori is standing by her man. I'll say that. Okay, I think that's it. There are just so many, but I think we're out of time. I've been talking 90 minutes. So, Nate, I'm trying to find you in the court. We'll end with this one. Nate, I'm trying to find you in the courtroom. Where are you? Let me show you on this video where I am. See, my screen just turned off behind me, and I am located right here. Where's my little pen? I pretty much sit here every day. If you watch, I'm right here. I purposely don't sit there to be on camera. It's just, this is close to the door, and I'm against a wall, and I can put my bag and jacket here on the floor. Tiffany from Court TV sits here. In the Lori's trial, I sat over here by the window. But that's because I needed a power outlet, but I have a new computer, so I don't need power as much. And, this is just kind of my spot. It's not guaranteed every day. Someone else could sit there. Today they filled up the rows over here, and, over here was pretty full. There were a lot of people there today. I promised last night that I would show you the drawing of the courtroom, and I didn't do that tonight. There was just so much to talk about. So tomorrow night, I'll show you how it's all laid out. All right, everybody, I have to run to the store. I'm out of floss, so I'm going to go get some dental floss and brush my teeth and go to bed, and we'll be back at it tomorrow. Don't miss tomorrow, 8:30 a.m. Where's my graphic? 8:30, the testimony begins. Live updates all day long on eastidahonews.com. I'll recap it all at 6:30. You can catch up on all the witness testimony on our YouTube channel. Want to follow me? Please, not like the 144 following Chad. I don't want you to think like that. But if you want updates, follow me on Facebook, Instagram, X, and eastidahonews.com. One final thing before I go. My son Everett is 9. He's 9. And he was a lead role in his class play. And he has been practicing his lines for months. The day he got the script and got the part, he was so excited. He's been rehearsing for months and months and months. And today was the play. And I was so crushed I couldn't be there. And he woke up throwing up. And he threw up 3 times this morning. And slept on the couch. And my wife talked to his teacher. She's like, we have to do the play today because like all the parents are coming to the school and all the students have been waiting for this day. We can't like postpone it. And he had a nap and he woke up feeling okay. And he went and he did the play today at 2:00, didn't throw up, did a great job, went home, had his energy back. I'm praying he doesn't get any other kids sick, and I'm so sorry if he does. But that's my shout out for Everett tonight. I already talked to him on the phone. My wife was able to videotape the whole play, so I watched it before I came on. So my heart was there in Idaho Falls today during the trial as he played Mr. Snake in the play. All right, that's it for tonight. Thank you for watching. Have a good night. I'm Nate Eaton. We'll see you tomorrow.